welcome to UberCube, the podcast where we discuss all things Cube, but with refreshments. This is your host, Anthony Adams. And before we continue forward, you've probably noticed a trend. We're kind of doing this, we're getting a little artistic, a little artsy. We're going super meta. We've actually enjoyed these episodes where we're not prepping a lot. And mostly, it's not so much intentional so much as we just don't have time to prep, if I'm being completely honest.
Show notes are for boomers, okay?
I like
old
it.
tech. No, I don't know how many people are even reading them, but either way, these kind of less structured episodes where we get together and kind of jam things out, I dig it.
But I have made Stu promise that he has to not let the point go off, like Wilson into the ocean. We got to pull it back in and go.
Trying.
We are talking about Wilson today, not Voight, as a product. Okay, cool. All right, so we got our good friend Samich, a.k.a. Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, how's it going, y'all? Thanks for having me.
And we might get one of those, I don't know, so I'm old. I don't know if you remember the show Laugh-In, but for the really old ones listening right now, their whole little shtick was people would open up like a barn door, stick their head out, and announce that the guest was actually in the house. You wouldn't know they're there. We might have May do that. We don't know yet. She's out and about. So if randomly May gets in.
She'd go, howdy, y'all. Open the door and say, howdy, y'all.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, you are old.
I see May doing that,
Yeah, you are extremely old.
No, I know I'm old. But Laughing was way before both of our times.
That is all true. Yes. That is. The Sullivan brothers. Yes. All right. Let's do this. So here we've got a little bit of a weird episode. We are going to go meta. There are no notes. So audience, forgive us. But what I told Chris before we come in is just let your mind flow. I'm going to tell Stu the same thing. I want you to try to put yourself in the shoes of a lot of people when I ask a question, a lot of cubes. And here's the question that I'm putting out that we've said over and over again. It's not so much a question as a statement. We have a habit, especially on this show, but in others, that says context matters. We always say context matters. And it's almost like this blank check of I can do what I want because context matters. And we know all this is true. There's always a gray area. Whenever we add our cards and select our cards for our cubes and our curation, it is very much... It's not black and white. We know there's a reason why that card is there. We know instances of cards that didn't make a lot of sense in the cube. There are reasons why people will have a card, whether it's their pet or it's a mechanical reason or a thematic reason. So context matters is a very vague statement that we use to get out of the situation we're painted in a corner.
No pragmatism allowed.
That's correct. But today we're going to do context matters, but then try to explain why the context matters by, I guess, we're going to start with one card, and it's something that happened recently that just kind of sprung a light bulb in my head. The card in particular is Chandra, Torch of Defiance. For 2 colors and red, you get a legendary planeswalker, Chandra, 4 loyalty. +1, exile the top card of your library. You may cast that card. If you don't, Chandra, Torch of Defiance deals 2 damage to each opponent. +1, add 2 red mana. -3, Chandra, Torch of Defiance deals 4 damage to target creature. Or, womp, the one that everybody wants to do, -7, the emblem. You get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, this emblem deals 5 damage to any target. This is what we're going to do. So previously, in our world, Chris, would you agree, there was a time, and it is still there, in a powered vintage cube, like power maximum cubes do see this card thrive in there, correct?
Yeah, it's just, like I said, it's too bad there's no other Chandras that were ever printed. Oh, this is like the best one, in my opinion. It's just it's just too bad. I wish they printed more. I think they'd do more with that character. It's, whatever.
Well, they have not to go too tangent on it, but I made the joke I say it last night when you said that exact same thing. I said, well, there always is Tybalt. I don't know why you have to avert your eyes for Tybalt. For 2 red, you get Tybalt. You can get any cards you want and lose any cards you want at random. It's so great.
Tybalt has permanent meme
status. There's an uncommon good Tybalt. There's an uncommon good Tybalt. That's actually okay. It makes devils, I think. Yeah. I don't know what else it does.
There's also another Chandra, too, to not go too far off of, the one that makes the elementals. It's a 3-drop. It's pretty neat, too. It's kind of a pyromancer version.
I know. I was kidding. There's lots of other Chandras, but this is the one. If you're going to run like a higher power cube, this is the one you run.
Yes.
I mean, let's be real.
Yes. Yeah. So that's the benchmark. It was, for me, in my brain, I saw Chandra, Torch of Defiance in a vintage power cube. It created the context of, I guess, power for me. Right, wrong, or indifferent, when I looked at the card, I saw it in big list, means it's a big card. Means it does a lot of things. It must be uber powerful. Like, it could almost radiate the idea that this card only belongs here because it's so strong. Do you believe, Chris, that vintage cubes, when you put a card in, and I know this is not they've changed over the years, but we have said powered max vintage cubes are the most broken cards in Magic. Would you agree, both of you?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you put a card like Chandra, Torch of Defiance in there, it must signal that it's super broken.
I don't know if I would necessarily agree
absolutely
with.
Not.
Yeah, no,
absolutely
no. I don't want to agree with super broken. I would agree with the fact that there's only so many. If you're talking about literal power maxes, there's only so many Power 9 and Time Vault, etc., etc. There's only so many of those really broken Black Lotus, Ancestral, yada yada yada. You still need pieces to fill out the rest of the 360 or the 540. So now the question is, at what point does Chandra sort of fall off?
Nope, that is not what I'm going for at all. But you've got your one subset. We've established that it made the team, right? So anybody that watches football, some people don't make it. And you might be like Rudy and you do a walk-on and suddenly you get accepted on the football team.
Or they get old.
Yeah, or you get old and you do a walk-on, you get accepted on the football team. Or the guy from the Philadelphia Eagles did a walk-on, got accepted on the team. It happens all the time. It happened with Durham Bulls. Do a walk-on and get accepted by the team. Well, maybe this did a walk-on, got accepted by the team, but now it's part of the elite package of Vintage Power Cube. And for anybody who can't see me, I'm doing these air quotes right now. But it signaled, like a bat signal, in the air, this card's super powerful. It's so powerful. And here's an open-ended question. Is it so powerful it doesn't belong anywhere else, Chris? Question mark.
Oh, absolutely not. It is not so powerful that it belongs anywhere else. There's, in any power vintage cube, there's like a top 10 red cards. They're like probably shouldn't go in other cubes. You know what I mean? But this isn't one of them. Not anymore, at least. Maybe it was a while ago. Because when was this printed first? Kaladesh? Yeah, Kaladesh was when it first printed. It was amazing when Kaladesh came out, I think. And just because it goes in a vintage cube doesn't mean it can't find a home elsewhere.
Okay, check. Got that one out of the way. Okay, next thing was, you said it was powerful. Was it powerful based on a time in Magic's history, or is it powerful currently? Is it still powerful to you, Chris?
Still powerful to me, yes. It still does things. It does a lot of things. It's removal, it's card draw, it's ramp, it's all those things tied into one for 4 mana.
Yeah, you're saying
also saves you life. So it does that too.
But you're saying it's not mutually exclusive or bound to the most powerful maximum cubes out there, right? Min-maxing, right?
Absolutely not.
Okay,
absolutely
so your angles of attack were kind of, it may have been aged out. It's Kaladesh, your other angle of attack because let me ask you, do you feel like you would have felt that way when this first came out in Kaladesh? Like, it came out, you put it in your Power Vintage Cube. Did you consider ever putting this card anywhere else besides, I know you hadn't developed the cube, but has it ever crossed your mind outside of Commander?
Well, I'll be honest, I don't know if I ever played this Commander, but anyway, the way I see it at the time, first of all, context matters here.
There you go.
I didn't have a cube that this would go in. I had a pauper and a peasant cube. This be mythic. This is not going to go in those cubes. So I didn't have a cube that this could go in at the time. But if I did, you could put it in an unpowered cube very easily, and it would be just fine. There are plenty of unpowered cubes that play this.
You took a little bit of bait there. So we did this card. It's got the word mythic on it. So I'm going to ask you a question. Chandra, Torch of the Defiance is like a menu. It's like an a la carte menu of things. I'm going to ask you a question. If you remove the rarity restriction, could this card function in your peasant cube in its current state?
It would probably be one of the best cards in the cube by far.
Give me your rationale outside of it.
I'm being honest, because it just does a lot wrapped into one card. Whereas, again, context matters. The higher power the cards around it, the less powerful this gets. But the less powerful it is, the higher. You know what I mean? Like when it's surrounded by cards that aren't as powerful as this, even though a lot of peasant cards are very powerful, they're not like this. They're different. They don't do as much as this does. So that's what I'm saying. It will be very powerful in a peasant environment.
Let's go metaflow, though. I don't disagree with you. But what is your creature content in a peasant cube and say on the pie chart? What are you looking at percentage-wise?
Oh, hell, I haven't looked in a while, but it's very high.
65%?
Probably around there, maybe. I don't know. I haven't brought it up. I could do it right now, but I don't feel like it.
No, don't. This is meant to flow.
Yeah.
And then what's your removal suite like in a peasant cube? Is it anything tailored incidentally towards a planeswalker, question mark?
There's a few, but there's not many planes. There's like maybe 2 planeswalkers in the cube now. I ran a bunch more. I used to run a bunch more, but I cut a bunch of them because they just weren't very good. So.
And this has the ability to basically, in its text, it can deal 4 damage to a creature, but it reduces itself down to 1 by doing that, right? Or you could incidentally damage a player for 2, which is kind of a slow tick. I know this is sweet cards on here, but we're focusing on the uncommon peasant kind of format that you have. So you ever thought about, like, can the ants or the David and Goliath, or can the ants take down the giant type idea? Like, you're creature rich.
They absolutely could. They absolutely could kill this thing. This thing wouldn't survive too long, but you could probably keep it in the right deck, keep this thing alive long enough to outvalue the opponent by a lot. And that would happen probably more often than not, because you could, again, you're also going to draft creatures with this. You're going to be able to protect it for the most part. Will you do it all the time? No, that's the variance of Magic. So, there's not much you can do with it. But it will take over games. This will be a very unfair card in that environment.
All right.
But would it be 100% win rate? No.
No.
Not at all.
Well, let me ask you then, why is it that? All right, I'll question that, because 4 mana for 4 damage to a creature, right? Where does that fit in with the rest of the cube that you're talking about, right? So Pauper Peasant, whatever.
Kabu.
Yeah,
that's Flametone Kabu.
Right. So you already have something comparable to the -3, which leaves Chandra the most vulnerable. Adding 2 red mana when you've already spent 4 mana in which to get the Planeswalker out means that on that turn, I don't know, it's okay, it's not great. I don't know how impactful that would be specifically in that cube. But then the exile the top card of your library, you may cast that this turn, or you may cast that card, and otherwise you get the 2 damage. Like, that's cool. You don't get to cast the card for free. So if it comes down on rate, you now need to have mana in order to cast a spell. So is this where, and I don't know, I'm asking you this, and this is maybe a broader question for other Planeswalkers, is it just the sum of its parts rather than just the individual components of this card are powerful in the context of the cube?
I think the only thing that makes this card, frankly, is the -7, because it actually can be realized.
Is it though?
Yeah, I just see that one. That's the only thing that
I don't know about that.
I don't know about you guys, but that's what I'm gunning for. I don't care about the rest of this ramp nonsense.
Well, you're always gunning for the ultimate for the Planeswalker. Listen, that +1, that now you have 5 loyalty and you've just done 2 damage to each of your opponents, that's pretty bonkers.
So, okay.
I can give you scenarios where this card would just absolutely to take over. You got in a red deck. Let's say you got that. There's a bunch of things in the cube now, like Soakins and Smelter for 2 mana that you can play, and it allows you to sacrifice artifacts, makes 3/1s with haste, kind of thing. So you could play this, then play that, or play this, then play another removal spell with your 2 red mana. It doesn't mean you're also going to plus it to get the card. You might. It can also just end a game if someone's at 1 or 2 and you just play this plus. I'm not going to cast that spell. You're dead. Kind of thing. So, there's that. That's a corner case, but it can happen. It's like, and it would happen.
Well, I wanted to build out the contextualization and how you come at it. Instead of us just doing the blank check, well, context matters, right? You have a logical reason as to why you wouldn't do it. So I'm going to put it in your other cube then. You told me no to peasant. I'm going to put it in your pauper cube now. Will it work?
Yeah.
No.
Pauper. Pauper has no way to deal with Planeswalkers pretty much. So there may be like 1 or 2 cards, period, in that cube. This thing just is going to be if you don't first pick this, you're an idiot. So that's all I'm saying.
Okay.
That rings true for Planeswalkers in a lot of these cubes.
Okay, so do me a favor and define your pauper cube overarching. Again, I'm going to go with the same argument. 65, 75% creatures.
It's a lot of creatures. It's a lot of creatures. However, again, you will build a deck. You will have this as your centerpiece. Just to say, it will be. You might not draw it. You might lose with it. You might not ever see it. But you build a deck with this. They might have creatures too, but so will you. You will be able to protect this thing better than you think you can. Why would you play this to an empty board? I would never play this on an empty. My side's empty, and they got a bunch of creatures. Why would you do that? Kind of thing. It's like, that's the way I'm looking at it. So
I told him I was going to rack his brain. I wanted to make him uncomfortable. Like, whoa, man, because if you opened up a pauper cube and you saw Chandra, Torch of Defiance, you'd be like, oh my god.
I'd be like, this is not a pauper cube, is it?
But you would be less. You're saying you'd be less put off or less shocked if you saw it in a peasant cube?
Oh, I'd still be just as shocked.
Why? It's just that little red shield on the top, middle right hand corner. All you do is scratch that out. I can paint that silver.
I'm sure you could.
Context matters.
Again, the context of the cube matters at all times with any card you put in it.
Okay.
It always matters.
Break down the pieces, though. Okay, so you're trying to kill this card. What are your ways to kill this card in Peasant Cube? Just list the generically top. Don't worry about the individual cards, but how do you make this card no longer threaten you? It's kind of obvious.
I mean, you attack it.
Yep.
You deal direct damage to it.
Yep. Yeah, fly over it. Yeah, bolt it. Yeah, burn it.
That will kill a. There are cards that will kill a planeswalker directly. I think of like a Bone Charge or something like that. But we also have like an improvised club deals with this pretty easily. There are tons of ways to kill it, but doesn't mean it should go in there.
Nope, I agree with you. And I think it's mostly because it has that little red symbol. We kind of talked about this recently with Planeswalkers.
It is not just because of that. Again, it's not just because of that. I'm trying to reiterate to you, it is because it does all the things.
Yes.
It does all the things.
Let's go and let's get in our future time machine 5 years from now. We've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles just pooping out all kinds of wackadoodle cards right now. Is Chandra going to be relevant 5 years from now? Will it be Peasant? Will it be Pauper?
Oh, I don't think they would never print something like this at Uncommon.
No, I know they're not. Use your imagination brain here.
If my imagination says they're going to be very powerful cards that do different things, but Chandra will eventually be priced out of that, probably out of any cube, in my opinion. With the way they're going, it'll probably have to come out at some point.
You know, you said context matters, right? So the context in this framework is Chandra. What I'm interested to know, Anthony, is why you chose this, and would the conversation shift if you chose Liliana of the Veil?
Nope.
Or if you chose Jace the Mind Sculptor?
Nope. There's a reason why I chose this particularly. You put it in your Exile files. Tell us what's your Exile files cubes. Tell the audience what that is.
Yeah, that's a cube that I recently developed that was started its life as a bar cube. Basically, that you will try to cast things from anywhere but your hand. Graveyard, exile, mainly those two things. But there's different exiles. There's one exile zone. There's different ways to get it in there. With like plot, foretell, adventure, all those fun things. And there's lots of payoffs in the cube to help you do that. And would get rewarded from it, either through tokens, drawing cards, things like that.
Where would you put your power level scheme on that? Like if you had to put it on some kind of orbit of power level, let's humor me. Do the commander 1 to 4. What deck are you playing with that cube?
Oh, you mean the bracket system?
Yeah, do it. Yeah, we're doing cube bracket system.
Oh, it's full of game changers. So I'm assuming I don't actually.
I really don't know because I don't care.
I would call it a solid bracket 3.5. If not bordering on 4.
Sure, yeah. I mean, there are cards on that game changer list that I'm aware of that are game changers that would never go in a cube. So you know.
So the reason why you guys are asking, why did I bring out this card? Well, one, Chris put it in his new cube. Up to that point, it's had this false prestige, air of touch of defiance, where it's been in the powered vintage min-max cubes, for a while. There had a period in time where this card was just crushing fools. And then now I see Chris getting innovative, got a new card. Yes, it has some very specific keywords that really play thematically into his new cube, the Exile files. And he just slams this sucker in. He just says YOLO. And this made me start reflecting and asking myself, that's why I'm doing this episode, at what point do we have to take these cards off this pedestal? And I've got a few more. They're up here. And we tell everybody, you should never add that to your card. And I'm not going to go the Soul Ring route here, but you should not put that in your cube because it'll break it in half. What are the reasons that they eventually just kind of start receding down the line, right? I got a lot of reasons I could answer, but the blank check is context matters. But I wanted, for people listening, when we say that, I wanted to have a really round approach as to how Chris is a designer and how I come at it and how you come at it and how we get there to, well, contextually this fits. And there's a reason why this shall exist. Because it's easy to just go, well, the reason why I put it in here is because it does the part about the exile part and it does 2 damage to him because that fits the theme. Because that is why he added in here. But then he has to now look at this card and go, well, that's cool. I'm exiling cards that fits my theme. But, oh, what about that emblem? That just go ham, which we have seen done now. And that is my most exciting part of this card and actually really encourages you to win the game when you start doing the exile parts because now you're playing multiple cards per turn. It is what the card is, like a self-contained little nuclear engine that you have to keep cool all the time. But it's always been like up here, up in the stars, right? Well, when it came out, it was in the stars. It would have been a card had you seen it a Pauper or Peasant Cube, and I know those were a little wild, but if someone wants to put it in their Peasant Cube, maybe it'll look a little less wild to you if they just kind of scratched over it and they kind of brought their power delta up or closed the delta.
Well, that's...
you see what I'm doing here?
I do, and I would say if we're going to stick with kind of context as the overarching theme, then for me, it's one of two things. The context always needs to be the cube.
And the number two
right?
is we didn't talk about our drinks.
We didn't, but listen. The context is always the cube unless the card in question becomes the context itself. In which case, am I looking at this card because I want to evaluate it within the context of either a pre-existing cube or an idea that I have to expand? Or is this card the context, or any other card the context, because I wish to either redevelop a cube around this being the context, or a new cube where this is a pillar?
I see your logic.
Power level,
it was
whatever.
It was the first card I added to the cube that gave me the idea.
Yeah.
Or it is the theme of the cube. Or I just really like Chandra. She's my favorite character in Magic. Or, and that's all the context, right? That would be why someone could justify... Thank you to our sponsors for having our drinks. Let's start out with Chris right now. Mid-episode, we're getting wild and crazy here. What do you got?
Not going crazy, just having a cup of coffee. I'm exhausted from last night, so having a cup of coffee.
We're drinking a Speyburn. I just picked this up. It was
really
relatively
good.
inexpensive, but I've had this before. It's good. It's a 10-year, nothing crazy. It's about as young as it gets in the old LCBO here or whatever in North Carolina. But it's a single malt Scotch and it tastes delicious. So I'm about it.
I always pondered on the first person that made the first Scotch, and then they have to make that promise. Well, Chris, that was fun today. I enjoyed distilling with you. I will see you in 2036, and this shit's going to be lit.
There's your context. There's your context.
In no way do we continue making it so every other year that we can have it. We just got to wait for this one.
No, we don't think.
Right?
We got too drunk on year one while making year two. All right. So what we're kind of doing here is asking, can I... paradigm shift? Can I power shift Chandra? Can I take this like a slide rule and move this card around into different environments? Which, before we kind of tag this, we close this one off here, I saw you did it. I did a little bit of monkey see, monkey do. I thought, man, I've just kind of relegated this to my power vintage cube for so long. Even though in there, in my mind, it's been slowly waning. It's a good mid-range card, does the thing. But I have kind of been watching it. Oh, hi, May. Welcome to the show.
Y'all.
We're going to so for the audience, we're not going to tell May what we're talking about. And part of the game is for her to figure out what the context matters is.
Oh, no. What have I walked into?
There we go. Hi. So what we're talking about, May, I'm giving for the audience, we're doing a context matters type bit. So we started out with Chandra. We started out with Chandra, and we're kind of closing that one off real quick. You kind of caught the tail end of that one. But what we've done is we've asked if Chandra was empowered vintage, can it be shifted to peasant and survive? Can Chandra, Torch of Defiance, go to pauper and survive? And now we're taking it back to his exile files, and then I'm about to add it into the fam. Okay.
I was going to say earlier, that could have gone into your fam very easily, long time ago.
Well, that's the problem. Okay, so I had the mental hang up, and that's what we're going to talk about here. The fold-in was, I've always had this like seed of doubt about, I guess, visualizing that card being too powerful to have been put in the fem. I've had it sitting there forever. So much that I put like Chandra Flamecaller in there, which I love that card. It's nostalgic, but it's like a 6-drop. But I avoided the idea of putting this Chandra in the fem cube because I modeled it, even though it's not the same, I modeled my fem cube very much off of the structure of your peasant cube in its power bands and how it plays. Do you see the challenge here now? So just because I didn't restrict myself to uncommon doesn't mean I shouldn't be very mindful of the contextualization of Chandra and just putting in something that looks a lot like, feels a lot like, smells a lot like a peasant cube. You don't want to smell like a peasant cube. That's just weird.
Speak for
No,
yourself.
the peasants don't bathe a lot, so you don't leave them alone.
Who wants to smell like some peasants?
Listen, this is a myth,
Exactly.
okay?
Make
This is a
that
myth.
so-
I will stick up for my English peasants at least. We bathed, okay? We did. It's important,
The babies got tossed out, though.
okay? Hygiene, okay?
Well, I mean, the bathwater gets a little dirty, so you got to toss them out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So,
Sometimes
May,
they
So I see what you're saying, Anthony, about that, but it's like You also have in some very powerful cards in your Fem Cube right now that Chandra can help, because you can bring the power level up instead of removing those other cards. I'm on that train right now with the Exile File
Become
cubes.
the
Exile File
context.
cube.
Become
So
the context.
to kind of pull this around, we're going super meta. We're going full flow here, May. So just unleash your mind here. Don't try to control any of your thoughts. A lot of this stuff has to do with when the card came out, it was time stamped. And during that time period, when a card was released, for the most part, normal Magic, that was kind of the meta, the strength, the power level, standard set or whatever we might have had, right? You get a few outliers, a few spikes. That happens every set. But for the most part, when cards come out, that's kind of where Magic lies at the time. So Chandra came out in Kaladesh, right? So now we're in the era of post-Avatar, post-Spider-Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We're moving into Star Trek soon. I think we're going back to Strixhaven. Question is, where does Chandra lie in that timeline where her power delta was much stronger at the time? I shouldn't say delta. Her peaks of power were stronger at the time of Kaladesh. Now we kind of take her and timeline her forward. She now lies in this world of 2026. She's not as powerful yet. When you're saying, yes, your Fem Cube is stronger now, you got to think about it contextually speaking too. When my Fem Cube was made, it was along the time marks of Chandra, of Torch of Defiance, where she would have been powered, vintage, regulated. You see what I'm doing here? If you drew a parallel between the two. Now you're shifting forward as Magic has strengthened up, and I keep adding cards just like you do. A cool card comes out that has an image of a woman on it, and I add it in. I'm very deliberate. I choose it, like Spider Bite or whatever it might be. I have to always think, well, where can I fold in this older card into the picture? Contextually speaking, this is where that context matters kind of debate comes from. But I don't think you could have went back 10 years ago and just put this in any old cube. It would have been a problem based on the technology of the time. Do you see where I'm going with this?
I do. I also want to point something out. The fact that we are actually still talking about Chandra, Torch of Defiance, however many years since Kaladesh came out, I don't even know when. That was pre-pandemic years. And it shows this card is actually still quite strong. The fact that we are able in 2026 to still talk about this card as if it's a decent Magic card. Because, so many cards from that era are just out. Like, they're gone. We're just not even talking about them anymore.
I like that you mentioned the era as well, because someone could pedantically say, well, we're still talking about Black Loader, so we're still talking, and obviously that's because they exist in a vacuum. Yeah, exactly. But I cannot agree more with that, right? Because I still feel like, and again, context is important, but what is it about Chandra? And it's not even just about Chandra. It's what about cards that exist within the framework that Chandra does? Is it... And break it down. Is it because of the Planeswalker? Is it because of the multiple abilities that are relevant, even at a relatively high power level? Like, what is it about this card?
I think that for me, it's going to be a weird answer. It's not going to answer directly what you asked. For me, it's just age and maturity of my curation and design. I'm more comfortable now than I was when I first started. I am willing to be more experimental now, although I will argue that Chris is obviously more experimental because, again, he did this first, and then I'm like, well, all right, maybe it's okay now, right? I do get a little experimental, but he is the one that's he adopted this idea. When he talked about Universe Beyond, he's like, I'm just YOLO. I'm gonna dunk myself in the apple pit here, and I'm going in. And I'm like, that doesn't seem safe. But now, as I'm kind of watching and experimenting and getting a chance to actually play this card in a different context, he's got an Exile Files cube to catch up, where everything is Exile. And what it did is it took this card and lifted it out of what I would have seen in the Pirate Vintage cube, which it would have been an okay card, right? It's a good card. It's a solid card, stands on its own legs. But then he picked it up and he moved it over to this other environment and did a completely environmental shift on it, yet it's powerful. It's not powered marked vintage, doesn't have Black Lotuses, can't cheat this out on turn one, kind of nonsense. But it still held its own, felt to me, observing the games, very fair, held up good sportsmanship. I think some cards can do this where we wouldn't expect it. What do you think, May?
Yeah.
So I think that when we're trying to put a card like Chandra Tourist of Defiance, jacket's got to come off,
Yes.
unsleeving for the conversation.
Roll
You
up.
know, roll up the sleeves.
Got to get ready. Got to get ready. You're about to
Boxing
beat some
gloves are
beats
coming
about.
on.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of the context matters conversations that come up even on our podcast tend to be centered around what do they do within their like respective environments. So for example, when I look at Chandra Tourist of Defiance and I think about it in just a pretty normal environment, it's a relatively decent card, right? It's card advantage with an asterisk. It generates some mana. It can move creatures. It does a really strong emblem effect, and all those effects are really strong. It's only 4 mana. Its cost of entry is like real cheap, and it's one of those cards that has very, very low opportunity cost outside of, oh no, the aggro deck decided to run over my planeswalker, right? But because of that, you run into contexts like, for example, the Exile Files deck, cube, where you throw Chandra in here and you have a lot of things that are also doing the exile thing. And in some ways, it makes it way stronger than some of these things. But in other ways, it also has more competition in other ways because a lot more of its niches that it would fill, it's now just contesting for, right? Where a lot more of the context that matters for this particular card really comes down to where you're trying to place it rather than what the actual card's power level is. And I think that's going to be roughly true for any card that you evaluate. Because when people, like as drafters, are just looking at cards, you're trying to look through whether it's bread or quadrant theory or whatever, you were trying to find some kind of way to assess the card at an individual level, then trying to assess it as how that card's going to function in the environment and whether or not that's going to be relevant enough for you to win your draft, right? And a lot of what the conversation points tend to be around is whether or not Chandra kind of sits in that weird outlier place, right? Whether or not that context, like, I guess keeps her in check might be the way to phrase that. But a lot of how I feel is that when you look at any card, and Chandra being the example here, if you are looking at it and saying, is this card going to win me the game by getting this onto the board? And is this going to win me the game within the context of the environment? That's when you can apply the context matters question of what is it doing within this environment that makes it particularly stronger or weaker within the environment. So
I would add that and if we want to sort of continue to use Chris's Exile Files Matters cube, right, as part of this discussion, then I think now you're, from a drafter's perspective, now I'm judging the card multiple different ways, right? I'm looking at it holistically. I'm looking at, does it have enough impact as a 4-drop? What does it do in general? I don't want to say as mid-range, but I always kind of tend to lean that way from Planeswalkers. But now I'm compartmentalizing that +1 ability because I'm thinking, if Exile is a theme in this cube, I have the ability to make use of something, maybe even abuse an ability that is such an essential part of Chandra's power level, right, in that +1. Plus, I have all these added benefits of I can add mana, or I can use it as a removal spell, or I can just use it as a distraction against an aggro deck, or whatever. So maybe that's a sort of a separate subcomponent of this context is, can you compartmentalize the individual abilities of a planeswalker, and this can apply to a creature as well, to sort of judge that from an overall power level when it comes to how it would fit into the cube.
To tie this one off real quick, because this isn't the Chandra episode, I have another one I'm going to throw at you guys as a boomerang here, but I kind of use like a Vindicate test, but it's modded for me. It's how does this win? How does this die? How does it lose? With a card like this, how do I win a game with it? How do I beat it? on the opponent versus the person casting it. And that's how I'm going to do whether or not it should even exist in the environment. And before I argue the idea of context matters, because to tie it off in the case of the Fem, the context is the fact that Chandra is a remarkable character in the Magic universe that supports women. And that I truly wanted to kind of downshift from the 6 mana value to the 4 mana value because this card has more impact. I am not leaning into, in the case of Sandwich's Exile Files, the actual, Exile, the top card is equally as good, just like it is. It's more generic for me, more thematic for him. I'm leaning into the art, he's leaning into the mechanics, and that's a different contextualization of the card's function as a whole, right? I'm going to go to another card now that we have. Yeah, we're pivoting here. The card that I'm going to talk about now, and I'm going to present this specifically to, let's do Stu and May. All right, we've talked about this card before. Umazawa's Jete. For anybody that doesn't know what this card does, it is a 2-drop legendary artifact equipment. Whatever equipped creature deals combat damage, put 2 charge counters on Umazawa's Jete. Remove a charge counter from Umazawa's Jete. Choose one. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 until the end of the turn, or target creature gets -1/-1 until the turn, or you gain 2 life, and it has an equip 2 cost. Okay. This is a timeline. I'm going to ask first question. It's not formulated very well, but let's do it like this. Chris, is this still Power Vintage Cube strong?
Yeah, I think it's still good enough.
May.
Yeah, I do.
Let's just keep it simple. Like, you're at max power. We still doing it. 540, 360. I don't particularly care.
I'm willing to say yes.
All right.
Yes.
Next
I'm willing
question.
to be wrong on that.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
No doubt. We're going to tear down now. This is the question I asked him before. Chris, could you play this in your Peasant Cube now in 2026?
Oh, I could. It would be very good. But yes, I could. It would, oh my God, this thing would kill almost everything in the cube. There's so many X1s. So many X1s. So.
And then for humor's sake, could this go in a Pauper Cube?
Well, any card can go in any cube.
I know anything can go in anything. I get that part. Okay, would it be horrible? And would it be a one-sided victory? It's just going to be totalitarian. They die. They're scorched earth. I get it.
If they don't remove it right away, the game, and you have a creature in play, this game is basically over.
And then the final one that I'm going to let you guys just freeform here after this is 2026, based on what all of you know about Uber Bear's Artifact Cube. Can this now make the cut?
No.
The GT?
No.
In the Artifact Cube?
Well, expound, please.
No.
What are you having, and can I have some?
No.
Well, you got to explain. Good. You have to too good. Just
too good. Just too good.
You're just spitting out your Brussels
just
sprouts.
Just too good. It's too good. It just does too much. I don't feel like it can go in there. I don't think you could just say, "Hey, I'm putting GT in there," and say that this is balanced based on the context being the rest of the cube. No, I think this would be a little bit too much.
Flashback question: can Chandra, Torch of Defiance, go in Uber Bear's Artifact Cube?
I would go with yes.
Uber Bear's Horror Cube. Chris, you know about that cube? Could it? I know it's not a theme. What would it do? Break it?
Be fine.
Be fine.
I'm serious. It'd be fine.
Yes. What's the where's the power level? Where's your throttle? Explain to the audience, not to me. I know the answer. Explain to them.
I'm going to go back to this Jete question here. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm making you intimate. I'm making you intimate all of it. You can't just say too good.
You had talked about it being too powerful for the artifact. See, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's too powerful for the artifact cube. I think it's high power, but it might be able to hang. It would be very good. Don't get me wrong. But
Manglehorns, Disenchants, Naturalize.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's what I'm saying. It's like the thing is,
it's
they
weird.
Have to remove it.
Context shift changed.
But it's like I don't know. I think it might be able to hang, but I get it. It is very powerful. It is very strong. It is very.
I think that there are a lot of engine pieces that it explicitly punishes, and when you're trying to encourage people to do the engine things because that's the kind of context for the environment that you've built up, right?
Oh yeah, this cut stoppers and servos and robots to
pieces. I
break that context.
Yeah.
No, I get it. It's just fun to think about that. I think it would just be fun. It would be a fun test.
It could be a fun card.
Yeah,
it would be a fun test.
What I want, you're right. I wanted the audience to kind of hear that. So this card, for anybody that doesn't know, my cube is kind of a machine, but it has leaned towards, like, as I said before, thopters and servos and robots, and I don't know what a lander is, but they're all in there. All these things are in there. All these things. This card could, like, little mini board wipe. What's the word? What was the old red card? You pay 1 and 2 colors and do 1 damage and 2 damage, and it was like a little mini board wipe in a cans. I want to avoid that. I'm babbling now. I get that, but I want to this card in the context of my environment that is rich with, we'll just say, disenchant effects. It still makes you all, some of you cringe, some of you didn't. Chris is experimental, and you went absolutely not, and you dropped the gavel. I'm see
not,
the problem here.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the whole dies to removal, so therefore it's okay. Sure. I'm not a fan of but there's enough removal in there. I always think that's a dangerous road to tread.
No, I don't disagree.
I'm not a fan of that either, but I do think this card, I understand, I see where everyone's coming from. I get it. I just think, I don't know.
The context is how many things does this actually shoot down? How many engine pieces does it shoot down? How many tokens
me either. I don't actually look at my cubes, but I do get the idea. I understand that. So we took this. Let's do another contextual conversation. It's a little history thing. I think this was this our 10,000th downloads, whatever.
I can tell you, if somebody's picking a pack of your artifact cube and then they see a GT in there, that's going to stick out like a sore thumb, because you're going to see like a pack of like miscellaneous like engine pieces or whatever, and then GT, right? Mm-hmm. And what the good players are going to do is they're going to just pick the good cards, regardless of whatever the theming is, regardless of whatever you're trying to push them into. Because for them, they're trying to just pick cards to win, and they're trying to pick the good cards, right? And a big part of that is that they are going to assess whatever those cards are doing based off of what their initial impressions are based off of what I'm seeing from the rest of these packs, my initial pack, etc. What can actually answer it? Removal? Okay, great. You remove this, I have other threats.
You don't even need to do anything else. You can draft 39 other cards, it doesn't matter what they are, and just put GT in there. And then you know what? It doesn't even matter what else I'm trying to do. I'm just going to start swinging with a creature, preferably a flyer, with a GT on it. And then, good luck.
Absolutely correct.
So one of my questions at the header of the episode, what I was trying to attach to this is, one thing, we all have an emotional response to Jete. I imagine a lot of people listening to this has an emotion, because it's, where on this doll did Jete touch you kind of thing. We've all been struck down by Jete at some point in our career. We had the legendary cube where Nathan put this in the almost legendary Romple Stomp. Multiple people were all screaming that Jete is breaking us in half. His context, and it's not so much context, it's more of like understanding it. He still updates that cube, but he doesn't update it to the regularity that I do with my artifact cube. Like on pacing wise, I'm modernizing, at least I have to imagine because I haven't seen it in a while, I'm modernizing the tech of my cards are moving forward. Jite is from Kamigawa, right? And so, it's still super powerful. But at the top of the question, you said, it's still in the vintage cube. I know it's still there. We all know it's still there. It still holds its own. But it's not that pack one, pick one, desirable. At one point, remove Moxon and all, this card would have been like Slamma-Jamma 10 years ago, right? Just take this card, boom, win games, as you said. The monster that this created, so we have an emotional context to this card from all of us having feared this card. We also now have modernization of Magic, and then put in the context of an artifact-centric cube that's going to have naturalizes and dischance.
Well, you're layering your context now. You're getting real deep
into it. It's rich. It gets rich. It
sure does.
But so when you back to the top, and we said, May, why are you running this card in the fake cube? Well, context matters. And nobody knows what that means, but I thought during this episode, and May, I'm going to hand this over to you, we really wanted to exemplify what we mean we're saying context matters. May, what you got?
So a big part of that, which is a really good segue actually, is that making this a little bit more generic so that we can kind of understand beyond just the specific examples, is that when people are assessing the cards, when you're assessing the cards as a cube curator, is going to be different from when people are assessing it as a drafter. And a big part of that is recognizing what the context is how it affects your environment, how your environment can respond, and what a drafter is going to be seeing alongside of it in a pack. right? And a big part of that is, let's take Jite again. If we have Stompy Cube as an example, where a majority of the cube has more than 3 toughness, Jite is no longer the strongest card there. It's just not. Like, sure, there could be like 1 or 2 cards, maybe like a Mother of Runes or something in there. But overall, the point is that people's range of interactions significantly higher with Jite because it just doesn't have as many targets. That is the context that matters.
I don't know about that.
The context that makes Jite strong.
Let me ask you a question. I want to ask you a question.
I don't know about that. I'm actually going to argue that 3 is the sweet spot, because if I'm attacking or blocking with my 1/1 power creature, and your 3/3's in the way, then I let damage happen, and then I take those 2 counters off to kill your 3 toughness creature, and I've lost a 1/1, you've lost a 3/3, and I've still got a Jite.
I got one more mind twist. One more mind twist. Put this in a proliferation cube where we're stacking counters on things. My army's going to get counters. Your army's going to get counters. Your Jite's going to get counters. At what point is Jite not able to keep up, or is it ? You see the conundrum here, right? I put a +1/+1 counter. You give me -1/-1 because I'm proliferating. You're proliferating. We're all proliferating. It's very Oprah, right? And at what point could this be a perfectly safe card, an element inside of that cube? Because it's getting outpaced. That's where it's going to get weird. We're putting this in some pretty basic, like
these are some insane examples you chose.
But that's it's a very normalized.
I think with the case of proliferate, you can shoot things before they actually get going.
I know, I understand.
Which is why I use like Stompy as an example, where it's just like all the relevant creatures are just bigger than Jite, and you need to get more counters on Jite before it's actually relevant. Because what in Stu's example, it's really strong as combat tricks of, I have thing that's weaker attacking into your thing that's stronger. Now I'm doing a positive trade, right? And that is a strong effect, but it only gets stronger, the more efficient your pieces are. And that's a big part of what Jite's context is. And that can be applied, the same logic and assessment can be applied to any card. Where if you are trying to figure out what is this card's strengths, what environment does this card excel in, and then what environment does this card struggle in,
which I think is perfect.
And Jite doesn't have a lot of environments that it struggles in. Let's make that clear.
Agreed. So to kind of tie these off, we did Chandra, we kind of went through that. We did Umasa's Jite. This next one is we're going to put Chris on the spot. He's been joining our podcast a lot. We're not going to do that one. Chris, I'm putting you on the spot here. What card? Think of a card that you think is very dynamic, shifts different context. What card do you feel like kind of transitions between a pauper and a peasant and suddenly goes something that kind of follows the track we're doing here? A card that's either got scary nightmare fuel attached to it, but suddenly you put it in this environment, it's perfectly fine.
Oh boy.
Take your time.
It's a really good question. Yeah. I think one card that I've noticed that I can think of that is now making the transitions into cubes of mine that I didn't think it would ever go in is cards like Force of Will and cards like that. I know you all have had this conversation before, but it was in my power cube only, like for a long time. And it's coming. It could go. I think it actually could live in my peasant cube and be fine. You know what I mean? And it's in my exile fall cubes because we had to have it. Blue was having a hard time competing without it. There was just a lot of stuff going on with that. So like cards like that are something that I could think of. Also just some cards one card that I think transitions well based on the environment is a card like Deep Cavern Bat.
Oh yeah. Lifelink steals card. Yeah.
It is a card that excels in almost any environment it's put into. Besides Pauper, because it's uncommon. I can't write it in that.
It's got that sick art I need to get from our horror cube that I haven't gotten yet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's great. But that's a card that it just stood out. My mouse just sort of hovered over it by accident. And it just sort of works, I think, because the higher power you are, the better it gets. But because you're trying to take someone's, combo piece or something like that. But even in lower power environments, if you take that piece of removal or, that literal combo piece, because there are combos at the peasant level,
right?
With things like the Persist combo and the Rosy Cotton combo and things like that. I think to me, that's a card that is able to jump around to almost cubes of any power level and be perfectly fine. Whereas a card like what was the other, there was another flyer, Freebooter?
Freebooter, yeah.
Which she is in the Fem cube, but yeah, or it's also in the
duress. It's a duress, and it's not as good.
Well, you're looking at the mechanicals. I look at the thematic. We come at two different directions. I will tell you that Shoop added that card to his Pirate Desert Island cube.
Sure.
That's his context for adding that card. So.
Right, because it's a pirate. It makes perfect sense in that cube. And it 100% makes sense in that cube. And I would not tell them to change that out because that fits very well in that environment. But if you look at it from like a mechanical standpoint, it doesn't scale as well. Because the higher power your cube is, the better a duress is. The lower the power, the less good a duress is. The more things that can get creatures out of creatures get better, the lower the power is.
Yep.
That's just how it is. I'm sure May can agree with her fake cube and everything like that. So it's like the spells get worse, creatures get better. Whereas you go higher power, it sort of flips a little bit. Although 2026, the creatures are just as good as the spells these days. But you know how it is. It's but that's my example.
I think that
is one that I would go with.
I actually think blue in general scales very well between the high and the low, right? If you look at, I'm looking just at your blue cards in your vintage cube, right? So I'm looking at Hull Breacher. Mm-hmm. It's a 3/2 flash, and it can absolutely be broken if you've got wheel effects. But if your cube has some number of just draw one card, maybe you make an argument it's not super broken, right? It's decent. Subtlety, okay, good card. Evoke, how much do we feel about Evoke? Is that really, really, and I always look at things like you've got to dump another card from your hand, which is why we talked about Force of Will kind of scaling well. So maybe that's something that blue just does well.
So where does scaling and context matter? Where do these arguments blend?
That's the point.
That's what we're having now. That's where they're digging in, right? You're saying this card scales up and down. We can go up all these different tiers. We can shift horizontally, whatever we want on the tier chart of cubes. But at one point are we saying that, well, context matters, right? Blank check. At what point can you intimate or explain the idea of why the context of the addition of said card matters? And it's kind of that, like, it's like an argument of like the defense of the hearth, right? Every designer, every curator has experienced this. May, you've experienced this. Why is this card in your cube? And then you blank check out and say context matters, but you also try to explain, but not everyone's willing to hear the minutia, the breakdown, the reason, the rationale as to why you're adding this card to your cube. Have you experienced that? Like, why is this existing in your environment? Question mark.
Absolutely. I think everybody does.
Yeah, I definitely do.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I think it's easier to say context matters. Go ahead.
Well, you can say that, but it's like sometimes you do. I try not to get defensive because, first of all, that's not going to solve anything. It's just you try to just explain your reasoning, and hopefully it makes sense to them, although it doesn't all the time. But sometimes they're better players than you and might have better ideas, and it's a good idea to listen to those kind of people. But some people are just like, I don't think this card fits, and then ends the conversation.
That's why I listened to Chris, and I added Chandra, Torch of Defiance to my cube after he did it because he's a better player, and I listened to him. And May, any final thoughts before we close this episode off?
No, I don't think I have any more additional thoughts.
So you got 12 minutes of conversation you'd like to talk about.
I'm kind of disappointed we didn't get to Cauldra because I'm sure
not
the
today.
context,
We'll save it.
Well, the context
Satan.
could simply be like, oh, if you don't have Stoneforge Mystic in your cube, then surely
Anthony's going to Puerto Rico and he's got to edit this weekend.
All right. We didn't get to it.
Take us to the socials.
All right. As always, if you want to get in on the discussion, Anthony, what are we looking at on the facebook.com/groups/MTGCube group?
Over 1,400 now.
1,400?
Every week it's getting insane.
Is that about as much money as we're getting from our patrons?
In rubles.
In rubles?
Yeah.
I thought it was lira. I think it might be in lira.
Yes. Pesetas.
Pesetas. I love that.
Yes.
I love that. Well, as always, to our Patreons, to David Wilsey, to Chris Fitzgerald, Timber Dragon, Brian Christensen, Keaton Schultz, Lord Justice, Preston, Sam McKenna, and Jeff Stumpo. Huge thanks to all of you guys for the ongoing support, helping us keep the lights on here at UberCube. If you want to get in on the conversation, hit us up at Bluesky, ubercubemtgpodcast.bsky.social, or at Twitter at ubercubemtgpod. Follow us on YouTube, UberCubeMTG Podcast 747. If you got a longer question or comment about this episode or anything else, Cube in general, hit us up, ubercubemtgpodcast@gmail.com. Again, big thanks to all of our patrons, patreon.com/ubercube. Much love.
And other than that,
We're gonna say
everybody needs to agitate and Chandra torture the planets to their cube environments.
I'm not saying that.
Context matters and
Before that.
happy
Context matters.